Hey there, my wedding planning friends, and welcome back to my channel. If this is your first time here, thanks so much for clicking on my video. I'm Emily Summer. I'm a wedding planner based in Montana, and I make weekly videos on wedding planning tips and advice. So today's video, we are talking all about wedding planning timing, and specifically the biggest timing mistakes couples make when it comes to wedding planning. One of the biggest timing mistakes couples make when it comes to the wedding planning process is not booking or reaching out to vendors early enough. There's a lot of resources out there that kind of provide checklists and guidelines on wedding planning and what should be done when, as far as timing goes, and booking vendors and how far out from your wedding date that should be. However, in the last year or so, we have seen a huge shift in the wedding industry as a whole and how quickly things are getting booked out. So a lot of those previous resources are a little bit outdated, and booking vendors typically requires a lot further advance now than it ever used to. So do not procrastinate on hiring pretty much any of your vendors. Your venue is pretty much going to be the number one thing that you book, and then caterers and photographers are vendors that book up very, very quickly and very far in advance, as well as wedding planners, of course. Another timing mistake couples make is reaching out to venues or vendors before having either their budget solidified or their guest count solidified. These are two things that you absolutely have to have before you even start booking any vendors, especially your venue, because both of those are going to be huge factors in this decision. And a lot of your vendors will relate directly to your overall guest list, or your guest count. So make sure that you have a pretty good idea of what you anticipate your guest count to be before making any other decisions, as well as what your overall budget is going to be. Number 3 is sending out invitations, primarily destination wedding invitations or save the dates, too late. So with a standard wedding invitation, typically you're sending those out probably like 2 to 4 months prior to your actual wedding date if it's not a destination for a lot of guests. If you are having a destination wedding that is destination for you or destination for more than half of your guests, meaning they need to book a flight, they need to book hotels, transportation, all of those things, you should be sending out a save the date at least a year in advance, so they at least have that date in mind so they know not to book any other trips, or make sure that that works with their schedules very far in advance. And then when it comes to the actual invitation, where they know what flight to book, what hotel blocks to have, and all of that, should be going out about 4 to 6 months, maybe even longer, depending on the location of your wedding, so that your guests have all of that primary information. On a similar note, number 4 is not securing hotel blocks soon enough. Especially if you're getting married. If you're getting married in a place that has a very high tourist season, a high peak season, like here in Montana, the summer months have become very, very touristy, and it is what is considered peak season for not only weddings, but also for tourism and people visiting our state. So hotel rooms outside of weddings book up very quickly in the summer, and your rates are not going to be as great the closer you get to booking your hotel. So a lot of my couples end up doing hotel blocks sometimes even a year in advance if the hotel will let you. Sometimes they have certain restrictions as far as timing goes, or if it's at the end of the year and the wedding isn't until the following calendar year, pricing might change in the new year. So certain things like that may play into the overall booking process for this, but you should be reaching out to hotels if it's especially a destination wedding about a year in advance, at least 9 months out, 6 months at the very closest, to make sure that you get those room blocks secured for your guests. And finally, the 5th timing mistake that a lot of couples make has to do with the actual wedding day itself, and that is not creating a day of timeline and having the timing planned out for your actual wedding day. And what I mean by a day of timeline is having your day from start to finish scheduled out, planned out, so that you have more of a schedule for your actual date when things are going to happen. So obviously your ceremony is going to have a set start time, because you would have put that on all your invitations for your guests. But other things like your dinner start time, the hours that your cocktail hour will happen, what time you're going to do toasts, what time you're going to do your first dance, as well as what happens prior to the ceremony. So your hair and makeup schedule, knowing what time vendors are going to arrive and giving them scheduled arrival times, and all of those little details that are going to go into your overall wedding day. To have a successful and efficient wedding day, you really need to have that planned out and have an actual schedule created. And this is where having a wedding planner or wedding coordinator really comes in handy. A day of coordinator, a large part of their job is creating this day of timeline and managing that day of timeline. So if you can't afford a wedding planner, if you want to do all the planning yourself, but the actual day of timeline part just really overwhelms you and stresses you out. This piece alone is where it is very handy to have at least a day of coordinator. On that note too, I also do offer a la carte services. I do offer a timeline creation service, so whether you are a client of mine or not, that is something we can hop on a call and I can go through my kind of checklist that I go through with all of my clients here in Montana and be able to create a day of timeline for you based on the vendors that you have, the location, and all of that information, if that is something that you need help with. So I've got a link in the description below that will bring you to some more information on that if you're interested. Otherwise, timing is huge when it comes to not only the wedding day itself, but also the wedding planning process as well. Hopefully you found this video helpful. If you did, please like and subscribe to get weekly videos on wedding planning tips and advice, and we'll see you next week.